Welcome to the Urban Herald. We're your guys today, part of the team here, and we're set to really unpack some complex tech history for you. We're not just reading off a list today. This is a proper deep dive into something that's, well, fundamentally shaped modern life. Our focus, the whole 40-year saga of the Windows operating system, from, that very first graphical shell back in '85, kind of clunky,
Yeah.
right up to the AI-powered platform we're seeing emerge today. Windows hasn't just changed with the times. Often, it's dictated how billions of us interact with tech.
Absolutely. And this history, it isn't just academic. It's incredibly relevant right now for you, the listener. I mean, Windows still runs on, what, over 70% of computers globally? That's huge. But there's this deadline looming, a big one, October 14th, 2025. That's when Microsoft officially pulls the plug on regular security support for Windows 10. So understanding how Windows got here, the choices made, especially over the last decade or so, it's actually pretty critical for figuring out that move to Windows 11 and for getting your head around where Microsoft's going with all this AI stuff they're pushing so hard.
Right. So our mission for you today is to dig into those structural decisions, the tech shifts, the cultural moments. How did this thing, which started as basically a graphical layer sitting on top of MS-DOS, become this AI-driven foundation we kind of rely on? How did it get so dominant? And what can the past tell us about, its pretty demanding future? Okay, let's unpack this. Right, first things first. To really get why Windows was such a big deal, we kind of have to step back into the digital dark ages, you could say. Before Windows, your computer screen was mostly black, with this intimidating blinking cursor. That was the world of MS-DOS Microsoft Disk Operating System. And for a good chunk of time, if you wanted your computer to do anything, you had to speak its language, a very specific, very arcane language. You had to memorize these text commands, things like dir, just to see your files, cd, to change folders, copy with exact file paths, just for basic stuff. It wasn't intuitive at all. It took training, definitely patience, and lots of careful note-taking.
Yeah, meticulous note-taking. That was almost a requirement. And
Yeah.
that complexity, that was the real barrier for most people. We expect visual feedback now, right? A progress bar, maybe a file preview, something to tell us it's working. Back in the MS-DOS days, none of that. You typed your command, hit enter, and you just waited, hoping you got it right. And organizing files, oh, it was a nightmare. You were stuck with that ridiculous 8.3 file format. 8 characters for the name, 3 for the extension. That's it. People literally kept paper notes, sometimes even flowcharts or spreadsheets just to remember what Q3SLSNE.doc actually was. The names were just cryptic.
Sounds less like personal computing, more like, I don't know, code breaking or something.
Yeah.
It really highlights why PCs were mostly for tech pros and serious hobbyists back then. That blinking cursor wasn't just waiting, it was kind of a gatekeeper.
Exactly. And the stakes were high. One typo in a command. You could accidentally delete something important or just fail completely. That kind of unforgiving environment really, really limited who could or would use a computer. Mainstream adoption. Not really feasible.
But the ideas for something better, for a graphical way of working, they were already brewing, just not initially at Microsoft. We need to rewind a bit, back to the 1970s.
To Xerox PR, the Palo Alto Research Center.
Xerox PR. Yeah, they were basically the blueprint factory for modern computing, their Alto computer. That's where we first saw so many things we take for granted.
Yeah.
The mouse, overlapping windows, the whole desktop idea, icons, menus. They pretty much solved the usability puzzle first, conceptually anyway.
So why didn't Xerox conquer the world with it?
Cost, mostly. Democratization was the issue. The Alto was revolutionary, but it was incredibly expensive, like tens of thousands of dollars back then. These were research machines, basically confined to labs and universities. Too pricey for the average person or business. It really took Apple to bring those ideas to market. First with the Lisa in '83, which commercially didn't do great, but then, crucially, with the Macintosh in 1984. The Mac.
Right.
That was the one that kind of translated Picard concepts into something people could actually buy and use. It brought in those metaphors we still use, like the trash can icon, dragging and dropping files, and WYZOYG, what you see is what you get editing. That showed exactly how your document would look when printed while you were still working on it. A huge leap.
And what Apple did really was twofold. One, they proved that regular people, non-techies, actually wanted this kind of graphical interface. It wasn't just a gimmick. And two, they showed it was possible to build machines with enough graphical power at a somewhat accessible price point, that commercial viability proof. That absolutely paved the way for Microsoft. They already had the dominant OS platform with MS-DOS. Now they just needed their own graphical layer to compete.
Okay, so Microsoft jumps into this GUI race. November 20, 1985. Windows 1.0 hits the scene. Fun fact, it was originally going to be called Interface Manager. Windows 1.0 sounds a bit catchier, I think.
Definitely. It was their answer to the Mac, but designed to run on all those varied IBM-compatible PCs out there, which were generally less powerful.
It needed 256 kilobytes of RAM, which was a fair bit for the time.
Yeah, not insignificant.
But it did offer some key things. Basic multitasking, mouse support was crucial, and it came bundled with useful little apps. Notepad, calculator, paint, a clock, card file.
Right, the essentials. It showed a GUI could be practical, not just fancy.
But it wasn't quite the Mac killer yet, was it? It had some definite flaws.
Oh, yeah. The biggest limitation, visually and functionally, was the windowing system. Windows 1.0 used tiled windows. They couldn't overlap. Imagine trying to work on a real desk where you could only slide paper side by side, never stack them. It made juggling multiple programs feel really awkward.
So how did people react?
Reception was lukewarm. Sales were pretty modest, maybe 500,000 copies over 2 years. Critics weren't blown away. Some even complained it was too dependent on the mouse, which seems bizarre now, but remember, the mouse was still a novelty for most PC users, and performance wasn't exactly snappy either.
Okay, so lesson learned. Microsoft iterates. 2 years later, December '87, Windows 2.0 comes out. And this version starts to feel a bit more like the Windows we'd eventually recognize.
It does. The absolute key improvement in 2.0 was overlapping windows. That sounds small, but it fundamentally changed the usability. Suddenly, the digital desktop started to behave more like a physical one. You could layer your work. That, plus we got the minimize and maximize buttons we still use.
Okay, better design. What else?
Better memory management, slightly better performance. But the really smart move, the strategic killer blow, wasn't purely technical. Microsoft made Windows 2.0 the required platform for the very first versions of Microsoft Word and Excel for Windows.
Ah, the killer apps.
Exactly. If you wanted the leading word processor and spreadsheet, especially in the business world, you now had to adopt Windows. That decision cemented their dominance in productivity software and drove adoption. Sales jumped significantly, over 2 million copies this time.
That ecosystem lock-in is powerful, and it really sets the stage for the 90s, right? Windows 3.0 and 3.1. This is where things really take off.
Oh, absolutely. Windows 3.0 in 1990, that was the breakthrough. A genuine commercial hit, sold over 10 million copies by '92. It looked much better, too. Improved VGA graphics, we're talking 256 colors at 640 by 480 resolution. Suddenly it felt professional. And technically, it overcame a huge hurdle. It managed memory better, letting applications use RAM beyond that old 640 KB limit from DOS.
And didn't 3.0 bring a big improvement in stability as well? Something about multitasking.
Yes, preemptive multitasking. This is a bit technical, but the impact was huge for users.
Okay, break it down for us. Preemptive versus what was it before?
Before, it was mostly cooperative multitasking. Think of it like kids sharing a toy. Each program had to voluntarily give up control of the computer's processor for another program to run. If one program got greedy or crashed, it could often freeze the entire system. Everything went down.
Right, the dreaded freeze.
Preemptive multitasking changed that. The operating system itself acted like the grown-up. It could interrupt a misbehaving program, take back control, and keep other programs running. It made the whole system much, much more stable, which was absolutely essential for businesses to really adopt it widely.
Then Windows 3.1 followed up in '92, refining things further. What was the headline feature there?
TrueType font support. That was massive for anyone creating documents.
Why was that such a big deal?
It meant, for the first time for many users, the fonts you saw on screen looked exactly like they would when printed. Smooth, scalable text. This instantly made Windows a viable platform for desktop publishing and professional-looking documents, competing with much more expensive systems.
And 3.1 also arrived just as CD-ROM drives were becoming common, right?
Perfect timing. It integrated basic multimedia features, sound support, video playback through Media Player. So the PC wasn't just for spreadsheets anymore. It was becoming an entertainment and information device, too. That stability, the fonts, the multimedia. 3.1 felt mature and ready for the mainstream.
Okay, so Windows 3.1 really solidified Microsoft's place. But then came August 1995. Windows 95. This wasn't just an update. It felt like a cultural event.
Oh, it absolutely was. More than just an OS release, it fundamentally changed how people thought about and interacted with PCs.
The interface was the most obvious change, just completely redesigned.
Totally. And elements introduced then are still with us. The Start menu. The taskbar. That Start button became instantly iconic. It gave new users a clear, single place to start.
And the desktop itself became more functional, like we use it today.
Exactly. You could finally put shortcuts to programs' actual files right there on the desktop background. Very convenient.
Okay.
And maybe even more importantly, Windows 95 introduced the right-click menu, the contextual menu.
Explain that significant.
Instead of hunting through menus at the top of the screen, you could just point at something, a file, an icon, the desktop itself right-click, and see a list of relevant actions. What can I do with this?
Yep.
It made exploring the OS so much more intuitive and faster. Discoverability went way up.
And for people who'd suffered through DOS, there was another huge relief, wasn't there? File names.
Oh, the liberation, yes. The end of the restrictive 8.3 file name limit. Gone. Windows 95 introduced long file names up to 255 characters. You could finally name your file third quarter sales report for the Northeast Region Draft 2 instead of, Q3ASLSNAIR.D2. It sounds minor now, but it made organizing your digital life exponentially easier for absolutely everyone.
Beyond the interface, 95 was a big technical leap too, moving to 32-bit.
Yeah, a full 32-bit architecture. That meant better memory handling, better overall performance. But the biggest user benefit was stability, building on what 3.0 started. It delivered proper, robust, preemptive multitasking. It felt much more solid. When one application crashed, and they still did, it usually didn't take the whole system down with it. That was a massive improvement over the 3.x days.
And it introduced plug and play, the dream of just plugging in hardware and having it work.
That was the promise, yes. Eliminate the nightmare of manually configuring IRQs, DMA channels, all that arcane stuff you needed to do to install, say, a sound card or a modem.
But the reality wasn't quite instant magic, was it? I seem to remember plug and pray.
Yeah, that nickname stuck for a while. You're right, it was a critical historical point. In 95, 96, plug and play was often flaky. Especially with older hardware components, it caused a lot of frustration. It really took a year or two for hardware makers to get their drivers fully compliant and for the technology to stabilize. But the goal was clear. Make adding hardware simple enough for anyone, removing another barrier for non-technical folks.
And the marketing. Microsoft went all out. $300 million, which was just astronomical then.
Unprecedented for software.
They got the Rolling Stones, Start Me Up for the theme song. Jay Leno hosted the launch event.
They even bought the entire print run of the Times newspaper in the UK just to run ads. It was a media blitz.
Did it work?
Oh, spectacularly. Windows 95 sold over 40 million copies in its first year alone. It cemented Microsoft's dominance on the desktop, absolutely, and it fueled a hardware boom. People needed new PCs or at least RAM upgrades. 4 MB was the minimum just to run it effectively.
So after that earthquake, what was the focus for Windows 98, which came out a few years later?
Connectivity. Windows 98 was all about embracing the internet, which was exploding then, positioning the PC as your gateway to the online world. It heavily integrated Internet Explorer 4, maybe a bit too heavily, leading to antitrust issues later, but that's another story. It introduced things like the active desktop, where you could put live web content right onto your desktop background. A bit gimmicky maybe, but it showed the direction.
Any key technical improvements in 98?
Yeah, a couple important ones. It introduced the FAT32 file system, which was necessary to support hard drives bigger than 2 gigabytes. Drive sizes were growing fast. And it brought much better, more reliable USB support. USB was new, but Windows 98 supporting it natively really helped drive the adoption of all those USB peripherals we use now. Then Windows 98 Second Edition in 99 added internet connection sharing. Super important as homes started getting multiple PCs and needed to share one dial-up connection.
Okay, moving into the 21st century. Windows XP arrives in 2001. This feels like another landmark release. Why was XP such a big deal?
Stability, primarily.
Yeah.
XP's biggest achievement was unifying Microsoft's 2 separate Windows lines. The consumer line, based on 9598 ME, and the business line, Windows NT 2000. It brought the much more robust, much more stable NT kernel foundation to home users for the first time.
Explain the NT kernel's advantage again.
The NT kernel was built from the ground up for reliability, security, proper memory protection, and networking. It wasn't burdened by the legacy MS-DOS code that still lurked under the hood in the Windows 9X series. Getting rid of that DOS baggage meant dramatically fewer crashes, fewer blue screens of death. It made home PCs genuinely more reliable. It was a huge architectural shift, kind of risky but necessary.
And visually, XP was different, that Luna theme. Very blue, very green, very rounded.
Yes. The Fisher-Price look, some called it. But the Luna theme was very intentional. Soft edges, gradients, bright colors. The goal was to make the interface feel less intimidating, more friendly, especially for people new to computing or less technically confident. Reduce that computer anxiety.
And it certainly stuck around. XP had incredible longevity.
Astonishingly long. It was officially supported until 2014, 13 years. And even then, many businesses paid for extended support. Some specialized systems, believe it or not, probably still run XP today. Its stability was legendary.
Which brings us to its successor, Windows Vista, in 2006. Vista aimed high with aesthetics and security, but it kind of stumbled.
Stumbled hard, yeah. Visually, Vista was ambitious. It introduced the Aero Glass interface, that translucent, glassy look for window borders, taskbar.
Yeah.
Very slick for the time. Features like Flip 3D for task switching looked futuristic, but its main focus under the hood was security. And the flagship feature there was user account control, or UAC.
UAC. The endless pop-ups asking for permission. People hated those, didn't they?
Yeah. Universally mocked, pretty much. Because yes, they interrupted you constantly. Are you sure you want to do this? Click. Are you really sure? Click. But controversial as it was, UAC represented a fundamental and arguably necessary security improvement. It forced applications and users, even admins, to run with standard privileges by default. To make any system-level change, you had to explicitly grant permission via that pop-up. This made it much harder for malware or even just accidental clicks to damage the system core without the user being aware and consenting. A massive security leap, despite the annoyance factor.
Okay, so security was better. Why the bad reputation then? Performance.
Performance was the killer. Vista was demanding. It really needed 1 GB of RAM, which was a lot then, and a decent graphics card just to run the Aero interface smoothly. Many PCs struggled, and crucially, the driver situation was messy. Hardware manufacturers were slow to release stable, Vista-compatible drivers for the new security model. This led to compatibility problems, crashes, and just sluggishness that really tarnished its image.
A difficult birth, which, ironically, set the stage perfectly for Windows 7 in 2009, the comeback kid.
Exactly. Windows 7 was Microsoft's redemption. It was brilliant because it kept the good stuff from Vista, the underlying security architecture, the visual polish of Aero, but fixed the performance and driver issues. It ran much leaner, felt faster, and was far more compatible with existing hardware. It quickly became incredibly popular, probably one of the most beloved versions of Windows ever. It just hit that sweet spot of features, performance, and stability.
And refined the interface too, right?
Yeah.
The taskbar got smarter.
Yeah, the taskbar improvements were great. You could pin applications directly to it, use jump lists to quickly access recent files or common tasks for an app, and the live thumbnail previews of open windows were genuinely useful. It also introduced features like libraries, virtual folders that could gather files from different locations, like all your photos from iPictures and downloads into one view, made organizing things a bit easier, and home groups simplified network sharing at home. Just a really solid, well-rounded OS. So after the success and stability of Windows 7, Microsoft decided to shake things up radically. Windows 8 in 2012.
Ah, yes. The great start menu removal. This was a big pivot.
Huge pivot. Windows 8 was all about touch and unifying the experience across PCs, tablets, maybe even phones. It introduced that Metro design language now called Modern UI with the flat, colorful life tiles.
But ditching the start menu for a full-screen start screen, that did not go over well with desktop users.
No, it really didn't. It created this confusing, jarring dual personality. You had the new touch-friendly start screen and apps, and then the traditional desktop lurking behind it. Switching between them felt clunky with a mouse and keyboard.
Why did they push it so hard? What was the thinking?
I think they saw the iPad taking off and genuinely believed the future was purely touch first, even on traditional laptops and desktops. They bet big on convergence. But they misjudged how attached users were to the familiar desktop paradigm, especially in businesses. The backlash was significant.
Which led to a fairly quick course correction with Windows 8.1 in 2013.
Yeah, they had to respond. 8.1 brought back a visual start button on the taskbar, though clicking it still took you to the full start screen by default. They also added an option to boot directly to the desktop, bypassing the start screen. It showed they were listening at least partly, but the core split personality remained.
Okay, so that sets the scene for Windows 10 in 2015, a return to familiarity.
Very much a strategic retreat and synthesis. Windows 10 brought back the start menu proper, but as a hybrid. It combined the traditional list of programs on the left with the live tiles from Windows 8 on the right, a compromise. It aimed to satisfy both the traditionalist and keep some of that modern dynamic feel.
Windows 10 also marked a fundamental shift in how Microsoft delivered the OS itself, didn't it? Windows as a service.
Yes, that was a major change. No more buying big new versions every few years. Windows 10 became a service that would be continuously updated. You got regular security patches, bug fixes, and importantly, major feature updates delivered automatically, usually twice a year. The idea was to keep everyone on the latest, most secure version, reducing fragmentation across the huge user base.
And it added some long-awaited features too. Virtual desktops finally arrived.
Yep, finally. A standard feature on Linux and macOS for ages. Virtual desktops let you create multiple separate desktop spaces to organize your work. One for work stuff, one for personal browsing, maybe one for a specific project. Kept things much tidier. Cortana, the digital assistant, was also integrated, though its prominence has faded a bit since then.
Okay, let's bring it back to the present and that deadline. Windows 10, end of support. October 14, 2025. What happens if people just ignore it?
Ignoring it is risky, very risky. After that date, Microsoft stops releasing regular security patches for Windows 10 Home and Pro. Any new vulnerabilities discovered after that, they won't be fixed. Your computer becomes an increasingly easy target for malware, ransomware, all sorts of nasty stuff. In today's threat landscape, running an unpatched OS is just asking for trouble.
And the upgrade path to Windows 11 isn't simple for everyone because of hardware requirements, particularly TPM 2.0. What is that and why is it a hurdle?
TPM stands for Trusted Platform Module. Version 2.0 is basically a dedicated security chip, a hardware component on the motherboard. It provides a secure foundation for cryptographic functions, things like storing encryption keys securely, verifying the system hasn't been tampered with during boot up. Microsoft mandated it for Windows 11 to enforce a higher baseline level of hardware security across the board.
But lots of older machines don't have it.
Exactly. Millions of PCs that run Windows 10 perfectly well, some only a few years old, lack either TPM 2.0 or have a processor that isn't on Microsoft's officially supported list for Windows 11. This creates a huge problem. It forces users with technically capable machines to potentially scrap them just to stay secure, which naturally raises big questions about e-waste and sustainability.
It's a real tension, isn't it? Security versus sustainability.
A massive tension. Microsoft's pushing for a more secure ecosystem, which is understandable, but the environmental cost of potentially forcing millions of hardware upgrades is undeniable. It's a difficult balancing act.
All right, let's talk about the current generation. Windows 11, which landed in 2021, visually, it's quite a refresh.
Yeah, a definite aesthetic shift. The centered start menu and taskbar icons are the most obvious change. Lots of rounded corners, smoother animations, updated icons. It feels more modern, maybe a bit Mac-inspired in places.
And functionally, any standout improvements for everyday use?
I think snap layouts and snap groups are genuinely useful. When you hover over the Maximize button, you get predefined layouts to quickly arrange multiple windows on screen. And snap groups remembers those arrangements, so you can minimize a whole group of apps working together and restore them all with one click from the taskbar. Great for productivity.
But the really big story with Windows 11, especially more recently, is AI Copilot. You mentioned this earlier. Is this the next interface revolution?
It certainly has the potential to be. Microsoft is betting heavily on it. Copilot, introduced in late 2023, isn't just a search box. It's an AI assistant integrated right into the OS, usually in a sidebar. The idea is to shift from you clicking through menus and apps to you telling the OS what you want to achieve in natural language.
Give us a practical example of how that works differently.
Okay, say you need to summarize a long document, draft an email about it, and find related images online. Traditionally, that's juggling Word, Outlook, a browser. With Copilot, the promise is you can just ask, summarize this report, write an email to my team about the key findings, and find 3 relevant stock photos. The AI is meant to understand the context and orchestrate actions across different apps.
And now we're seeing specific hardware for this, Copilot plus PCs.
Right. These are new PCs launching now that include a dedicated NPU, a neural processing unit. This is a chip specifically designed to run AI tasks efficiently right on the device itself, rather than sending everything to the cloud.
Why is that on-device processing important?
2 main reasons: speed and privacy. Running AI locally means faster responses for things like real-time translation or sophisticated camera effects in video calls like automatic background blur, or even adjusting your gaze to look like you're making eye contact. And crucially, it keeps more of your data on your own machine, which addresses some privacy concerns compared to cloud-based AI.
Speaking of privacy concerns, the recall feature. This one sounds intense.
Intense is a good word. Controversial, definitely. Recall, announced for ProPilot Plus PCs, basically creates a searchable visual timeline of almost everything you do on your computer. It continuously takes snapshots of your screen activity every few seconds, storing them
So
locally.
you can search back through your entire history.
That's the idea. You can use natural language search like, find that presentation about marketing budgets I was looking at last week, or show me that recipe website I visited yesterday. It aims to make your computing history completely browsable and findable.
But the privacy implications seem enormous. A complete record of everything you see and do.
Exactly. While Microsoft emphasizes it's local, encrypted, and user-controlled, the sheer existence of such a comprehensive log raises huge questions about potential security vulnerabilities, misuse, or surveillance. It's sparked a major debate already.
Okay, shifting gears slightly. Gaming. Windows is still king of the hill there, right?
Overwhelmingly dominant. Something like 96% market share for PC gaming runs on Windows, and Windows 11 continues to lean into that. They've focused on features like direct storage, which is technology borrowed from the Xbox. It lets games load data directly from a fast SSD to the graphics card, bypassing the CPU bottleneck.
Meaning faster loading times.
Potentially dramatically faster loading times in games designed to use it, less waiting, more playing. They also introduced Auto HDR, which automatically adds high dynamic range color and brightness enhancements to over 1,000 older games that weren't originally designed for it. Makes older titles look surprisingly vibrant on modern HDR displays.
Let's zoom out again. The sheer scale of Windows' impact is just staggering.
It really is. You mentioned 70% market share earlier, but drilling down, that's about 1.4 billion Windows PCs active worldwide. Annual revenue for the Windows division is over $22 billion. And in the enterprise market businesses, governments, it's even more dominant, often over 75%.
That keeps businesses so loyal, besides just inertia.
Backward compatibility, that's the secret sauce, arguably. The fact that critical, sometimes ancient, custom-built software developed decades ago often still runs on the latest version of Windows is incredibly valuable. Migrating entire enterprises off bespoke Windows applications is a monumental task. That compatibility protects massive investments and keeps them locked in.
And it shapes the hardware world too, doesn't it?
Completely. The Windows ecosystem supports millions of developers. Estimates are around 26 million worldwide. And hardware companies Intel, AMD, NVIDIA, they optimize their chips and graphics cards specifically for Windows performance, especially for gaming with DirectX APIs. It's a deeply symbiotic relationship. Windows sets the pace for PC hardware.
So looking ahead, Microsoft talks about a Windows 2030 vision. What does that future look like according to them?
It's a future heavily leaning on AI, unsurprisingly. They envision a time where using a keyboard and mouse might start to feel as old-fashioned as typing commands into MS-DOS feels to us now. The primary interaction model shifts towards AI agents. You tell the AI your goal, and it figures out the steps, potentially anticipating your needs even before you ask. Natural language becomes the main interface, replacing menus and clicks for many tasks.
More conversational computing.
Exactly. Less direct manipulation, more delegation to intelligent agents. It's a move from OS as a tool to OS as a collaborator or assistant. This vision also heavily involves the cloud. Think Windows 365, where your entire desktop environment, apps, files, settings is streamed from the cloud and synchronized across any device. The specific physical machine you're using becomes less important than your cloud-based session. Seamless transitions between devices.
But that brings us back to the hardware question and sustainability. How does that fit in?
It's the persistent tension. Microsoft needs to balance pushing for secure, modern hardware like requiring TPM 2.0 with the environmental reality of e-waste. There's growing pressure on them and all tech companies to design for longevity, repairability, and to find ways to keep older but still functional hardware useful and secure for longer. How they navigate that security versus sustainability tightrope will be critical for the next decade of Windows.
It really is an incredible story when you lay it all out. 40 years of constant change, adaptation, sometimes stumbles, but always moving forward.
Yeah.
From that initial attempt to make computers less scary with a graphical shell, through the internet boom, the mobile shift, and now deep into the AI era.
Absolutely. What stands out is Windows' ability to reinvent itself while usually maintaining that crucial backward compatibility linked to its past. It's always been about making the technology more accessible, more intuitive. First, it was replacing those arcane DOS commands with icons and menus. Now, the goal seems to be replacing even the menus and complex application interfaces with natural language and AI assistance, trying to make powerful computing even easier.
So here's a final thought for you to chew on, especially as you consider that looming Windows 10 deadline. If the first big revolution for Windows was getting rid of cryptic syntax in favor of the visual start menu, could this next revolution, driven by Copilot and AI, eventually make even navigating menus obsolete? Could we reach a point where even the iconic start menu itself becomes, well, unnecessary? Something to think about as we watch the next chapter unfold.